Welcome everyone, this is Pineleaf Needles and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO and here at LOTRO Players. And this week we have with us Anding,
Hey, everybody.
Etheros,
Hey.
Draculeta,
Hey, everybody. Let me take myself off mute. It might work better.
Raxwolf,
Hello, Lotro.
Sithrith,
Hello, I also have to take myself off mute.
and tonight the big story is half the people of us seem to be on mute. So we'll begin with our game news, and our big game news is that the LOTRO store is scheduled for some downtime on Monday. I know, whoop-de-whoop-de-doo.
Yay.
Yeah, actually, most likely the reason for this is because that's when DDO is having an update, and I presume that they needed to bring the entire store system down in order to implement the DDO update.
Yep, and there's a lot of new things in the store for the DDO updates. I'm guessing that has even more to do with it, probably.
Yes. So therefore, we'll then go into something more interesting, and that is the list of fall and winter time events. Draculeta, what are the events and what's the schedule?
We got a post from Freelord who gave us the entire rest of the year schedule.
Tentative.
Tentative, yes. Thanks for adding that. October 3rd through the 5th is Hobnanigans. Who cares?
Yes, but that's at the first weekend of every single month.
Again, I state, who cares? October 21st through November 2nd will be the Fall Festival. And then November 7th through the 9th, once again, is Hobnanigans. November 14th through the 16th will be a 25% mark acquisition boost weekend. November 21st to the 23rd, Loot Box weekend. November 26th through December 4th, 25% bonus XP weekend. Once we get into December 5th through the 7th, again, Hobnanigans. December 12th to the 14th, the Buried Treasure event returns. And December 16th through January 15th is the Winter Festival.
Yes, so it looks like that the Fall Festival, the first weekend of the Fall Festival, is going to coincide with the main day for the marathon, for the gaming marathon, for Extra Life.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but you are right. It
Yeah.
will.
We also have news that the Token Professor is coming to live stream on October 1st. Etheros, what's this all about?
You write the article,
Well-
and people just assume that you know what you're talking about, Atheros.
Yeah, do you want to cover it? You know more about Talking Professor than I do.
Yeah, basically, the Tolkien Professor is actually getting together with some of the Turbine people to, I guess, talk about like the lore in the game and some of the things like that. Which is incredibly exciting for me. The Tolkien Professor had been talking about, I guess, like the Turbine devs actually approached him and like started talking, like I guess Chris Pearson or one of the lore guys started to talk to him about lore, and he was so enamored by the descriptions and things they talked about, like how carefully they're actually looking at the lore, that once he's done with like the Hobbit film, Riddles in the Dark series, he's actually planning on possibly doing a LOTRO podcast. And so this is kind of an in-between thing between those two stages. So I think that it'll be quite interesting to hear his thoughts and also the developers' like descriptions of what they're actually doing in the game and just how carefully they look at the lore. I'm very excited to find out more about that stuff.
And when is this exactly?
October 1st, and
Yes, but what time?
I would have to open the article to actually find out about that. It is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on October
Yes.
1st. That's a Wednesday.
So hopefully they will keep that in the archives, since the people in the U.S. are probably going to be working during that particular event.
I can be home by
Well, some people.
Wow.
Right, let's
That
head.
I think you just got called out by Pinely Fandango.
I whispered, and he whispered back. There was no calling.
That's right. Nobody else heard.
Let's head to the store sales for this week. Draculetta, what's on sale?
Oh, free sample of the week is another absolutely worthless free sample. Regeneration food times 5. Use the coupon code EAT59. Don't know why you would bother, but there you go if you want some free food. One per account as always. 50% off quest packs in the store, which is always good to see quest packs on sale. But a word of caution, that does not include the new Gondor pack. I've seen a lot of people complain about that in the forums. That does not include Gondor in the 50% off. So if you didn't get Gondor last weekend when it was actually on sale, you're going to have to wait.
I think that's understandable, especially considering that it was on sale last week. It's the new area. That's the area most people probably need, and that's also the area Turbine needs to make the most money off of to support all of the development they put into it. So I think that that's understandable. It still is kind of crummy that they advertise quest packs and then it doesn't include one of the quest packs. But anyway.
Also in the store, 20% off Mithril coins, 100% XP boost for 1 hour, and max morale and power scrolls. The weekend deal through the 28th, which is the last weekend deal, as they only run those through September normally, is a pretty decent one that Pineleaf should be excited about, even though he doesn't need it. 75% off the Warden class. So if you are a premium or free to play and you want to be like Pineleaf, 75% off the Warden class, 50% off 100% craft crit, and 50% off the experience disabler. Also through this weekend, through the 28th, is the increased drop rate on the loot boxes. So get out there and get that red skeleton steed I'll never get. And yes, I'm never going to let that go. And also, limited time in the store through October 2nd, there are tier 10 stat tomes.
Someday, Drac, you are going to get that steed and can no longer say that.
Well, we'll see. It hasn't happened yet.
Pineleaf, that's a pretty confident statement. Unless you're going to personally get it for him. I mean, that's pretty confident.
But I am only opening loot boxes on Drac now, just for that reason. So when I find them, I put them in shared storage and I have Drac open them. So we'll see. It could happen, but I doubt it.
You doubt it. All right, very well. We'll head into the LOTRO site news since that's it for the game news. And our first little bit is that there is a Helm's Deep Premium Edition giveaway. And Anding, what's this all about?
Yes, well, Pineleaf, thanks to my supporters on my Patreon page, we are actually able to do a wow, I apparently did not change some of the text in this article because it still says a 60-day VIP code. I need to change that. We're actually giving away a Helm's Deep Premium Edition, which is awesome. And basically, thanks to my supporters on Patreon, like I said, that's able to happen, and all anybody has to do to enter is simply leave a comment on the video. And basically people will be chosen at random and a winner will be found and they will hopefully respond and win the code. If they don't respond, it'll go on to the new winner because I don't want it to just sit in somebody's inbox till the end of time and never actually get used.
All
So
right. And who's eligible for this?
Everybody but LOTRO players people. And even if you already own Helm's Deep, if you know a friend that does not own the Helm's Deep expansion, you can, gift it to them as a kind of surprise if you know that they are wanting it. And so yeah, basically you have till October 7th to enter into this. So be sure to enter in. And Kate says, that she can't enter. Yeah, well, you should have never joined LOTRO players if you wanted to enter in. But the chances... the chances of someone from LOTRO players entering aren't the best, but it's definitely worth entering because there will be some winner. So yeah, enter in and see if you
Yeah,
are the lucky person.
and that will give you access to the Western Rohan zones. But of course, we also want to know about filler zones. Andang, what is the favorite filler zone of the people at LOTRO players?
Well, it would appear that it is actually the Great River.
The Great River.
And the poll this week was, what was your favorite filler zone? And Inedwythe came up in second with 66 votes. Great River had 79 votes. And Wildemore comes in third with only 6% of the vote at 10 votes. I'm surprised Wildemore is so low, but at the same time, there are some places in Wildemore that are pretty hard to traverse. So I guess that kind of makes sense.
Yes, the Bellwood sort of
Yeah.
has
And
some people going.
Lilikate says Eagles. Yes, that is a reason to vote for the winning
Yeah,
zone here.
yeah, yes, that's right. The Great River has eagles.
Spoiler alert.
Semi-spoiler.
Yeah, geez, Pine Leaf. Gosh.
Oh, excuse me.
It was Lilikate
There's a
that
lot of
caused
snark
it.
in this episode.
There is. There is.
All right. We will then head into the Misty Mountains for Edicles of Evernight with his second part of his guide to the revamped Misty Mountains, where he talks about Hrimbark and Goblin Town and Heligrod. So that probably takes care of his series on the Misty Mountains, but I'm sure that we'll be seeing other items from him in the future. Anyone have any comments on the Misties or on the article?
Yeah, it just continues this great series that goes really far in depth. And one thing I did forget to mention is that Itacles is actually the head. He was the head editor or something like that for LOTRO Wiki. So he's used to doing a ton of research and writing out fantastic pieces of work. And so we couldn't be happier having him as part of the LOTRO players team.
All right, very well. Now, what is the video highlight of the week?
Well, Pineleaf, the video highlight of this week is Galadriel's Lament. It's one of the better trailers, in my opinion, that LOTRO has put out. And basically, it shows the evolution from Greenwood the Great into the terrible fortress of Mirkwood. Forest, not fortress, of Mirkwood. But I guess there's also the fortress of Dol Guldur. But anyway, it is a great trailer, and if you have not seen it yet, as always, I really do recommend this. Their Mirkwood trailer department just blew all their other trailers out of the water, I think. And really until that one Rohan Grima trailer, I don't think that they even came close to topping them since. So I really do highly recommend this Siege of Mirkwood trailer called Galadriel's Lament.
All right, thank you very much. Then we'll head into the outfit of the week. Sithrith.
Yeah, so this week's outfit is actually from, it was posted on YouTube quite a few weeks ago, but I'm a little bit behind because vacation. But this one was made on my live stream. Two hobbits requested a brightly colored outfit that does not clash and isn't too bright, but does have bright stuff on it. So that was a bit of a challenge because I don't usually make very brightly colored outfits anyway. But luckily with hobbits, it's pretty easy to find something suitably brightly colored for adventuring hobbits. So this one is a kind of general purpose adventuring hobbit outfit. You can dye it whatever bright colors you want. The chest piece and the hat anyways. The rest of the outfit is very neutral so that whatever colors you decide to go with work with the rest of the outfit. So that is that, and I hope those two hobbits have been enjoying it.
All right, it's nice that you're able to help some people in determining their outfits.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So now we'll go into the next episode of The Family Line, Part 11, West to Ruin. And therefore, continuing that series, anyone have any comments on this particular part of the series?
There's a map.
There is a map.
I have catching up to do.
Yes, there is a map that includes quite a number of marks on it.
And as always, fantastic screenshots that he's able to take. And it's not even just like, it's from like one perspective. I mean, he has like long shots, close shots, like landscape, epic landscape views. Like there's a wide variety and all of them look fantastic. So he definitely is able to do a great job each and every time.
Ah, yes, very nice. And the next thing is, of course, the poem. And this is actually part 3 of Estelle, the story of Aragorn and Arwen. The Nazgul chased us as we fled towards Rivendell. Then as a ray of hope he came, the mighty Glorfindel. The conqueror of Balrog, survivor of Beleriand, returned to Middle-earth from Fairyland. Then men, elves, and dwarves came, mighty heroes with stature and fame. Boromir, the captain of White Tower, Gimli with his axe of power. Legolas traveled many yards, and Aragorn brought Narsil's shards. The 4 little hobbits were united with Bilbo, who was also invited. Then the one ring to rule them all was brought. The free people quarreled and fought. Then Gandalf recited, Osh, Nosh, Der Baktluk. Frodo stood up, and upon himself this task he took. To go to Mordor and destroy the ring, though he knew not the way. And with him went Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn, Sam, Merry Pippin, and Gandalf the Grey. Together they formed the Fellowship of the Ring. Bilbo hugged Frodo and gave him a mithril coat and sting. And once more Aragorn looked back at her as he was about to depart. His eyes met hers, his elvish queen, his life, his love, his everything, his sweet heart.
So
That one.
Zinger in the chat says that Pineleaf is actually Gandalf, confirmed, and I agree because how else could you be so wise, as Zinger says?
How else?
And I agree.
Yep.
That is the only logical explanation, and you like your logic so much, Pineleaf. So you are clearly Gandalf. There's no question. It's confirmed.
Well, the only problem is I tend to be a moss gatherer, and Gandalf was very much a rolling stone.
And see, you use analogies like that. So see, you're very humble. I mean, you got the whole thing going for you.
All right, very well. That is, but that is part 3 of Estelle, and I hope that Aragorn remembered to reforge the shards of Narsil before leaving.
That would be good.
So yes, that would be good. Yes. So we'll go on to Brax's pick of the week. Brax, what is your pick?
Pick this week is by Pastuil over at thinkingplay.wordpress.com, and it is a Quest Pack recommendations post, and it's very timely with the sales that are going on this week. Basically, what Pastuil does is he goes through and he remembers what it was like to. He says he's got all the Quest Packs now, but he remembers what it was like when he didn't, and he wasn't sure which one to buy when they went on sale, and he wasn't sure, when he got to a certain level, what he should purchase. So what he's done is he's listed all of the regular Quest Pack prices here, and then he goes into pros and cons of different Quest packs that you could buy. it's kind of similar to what LOTRO Academy does, but not to quite as much detail. And basically, he takes, so from level 30 to 40, here's the ones that you could buy, and here's my recommendation. And then he does the same things for levels 40 to 50. So if you are in that position where you're looking to buy some quest packs because of the sale this week, and you don't know which ones to go for, go over to thinkingplay.wordpress.com and read through his pros and cons, and that might help you make up your mind.
All right, thank you very much. And now that ends the site news, so we'll go on to news beyond LOTRO. And our first is the making of Shadows of Mordor. And Andang has been making quite a fuss about Shadows of Mordor, so I guess he knows more about this story.
Well, this actually kind of surprised me because it actually goes most like quote unquote video game company documentaries show like, you know, a little behind the scenes here, and like they mostly paint video gaming as like this wonderful time, and you know there's nothing that ever goes wrong, and it's just this great time. And what I love about this documentary is whether you like Shadow of Mordor or not doesn't matter. They show the hardships of game design and how, you know, you have to basically when it's crunch time, you basically are, you know, spending your entire day and night at the company, and sometimes even have to, you know, sleep there and stay overnight, just to get the product done and out. And there's so much stress and then like relief and then, you know, a build up to stress again between like, you know, all the various conventions and all that stuff. And this actually goes through really showcasing that. The first episode is kind of like your typical gaming documentary, but then once it gets into the second one, it really starts to showcase just how hard game design can be. And they did an absolutely fantastic job. It has the narrator that they've been using for all their trailers, and it's a very good, you know, it gets into the drama of game design, which I did not expect at all. And I wish that more companies would do a behind the scenes type thing like this, because I feel like that most people kind of think that game design is pretty easy, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. And so if you're interested in game design and things like that, I really recommend watching this series. It was it really made me think a lot about the gaming industry as a whole.
All right, thank you very much. And the other piece that we have that's beyond LOTRO is that the DDO Players site has officially launched. But we will, of course, have more discussions about the DDO Players site in a new show that we'll be having, DDO Players, which will be premiering on Monday at September 29th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. In other words, it's the same time slot as LOTRO Players News, just 2 days later. And that will be streamed live.
Yep.
Anyone
and
have anything to say about this?
If you already join us live on our Mixler page, it's the same spot, and you can just go over to LOTRO Players or ddoplayers.com/live and click on the link, and it'll take you right to our Mixler page. And if you follow us on there, you'll be notified whenever we go live too. So it's very exciting. You know, we're taking a step into the broader gaming network world, if you will. We're, you know, leaving our comfort zone in LOTRO and you know, trying to expand into more places. Obviously, everything on LOTRO Players is our main priority still. We're going to be making sure we cover LOTRO right, and yeah, and also, if you enjoy Pineleaf hosting a show, he's going to be hosting DDO Players News, and I think that it will turn out fantastic. Some of our internal like test episodes, it's really interesting because the dynamic between Pineleaf and Drac is totally different when it's just them talking to each other. Their personalities really come out a ton more, And I think for nothing else, just to hear Pineleaf and Drax personalities without the rest of us there, it's worth listening because they're very different people without the rest of us. So I
I heard a
recommend.
rumor that it was going to be all poems. Is that true?
You'll have to ask
It
Pineleaf.
is presented in poem form.
Well, I don't think I'm prepared to do an entire episode in verse. All right.
That could be pretty informative though, Pineleaf. People might like that.
I don't know. That's the word on the street.
Barnabas
That's all I'm saying.
in chat says Pineleaf should host every podcast everywhere.
Oh boy. Let's go to the question of the week. Etheros.
Yes.
The question of the week.
Right, yeah, I knew that. I didn't just wake up or anything. So the question I chose for this week is kind of following on from the announcement he made about the Tolkien professor joining in and talking about the way Turbine handles Tolkien's writing in LOTRO. So pretty much all these questions are based on that. The first one is just a simple going around asking everyone generally what their thoughts are on how they've handled the IP as a whole, and occasionally gone outside what they can actually put in the case of certain things. Andang, what do you think in general?
Yeah, I think as a whole they've done a fantastic job. Chris Pearson was basically they had two people for the top role of the game design person. And Chris Pearson is actually a fantasy author, and so he's used to keeping track of all the different kinds of like lore and stuff like that you need to keep track of. So they actually just made him the lore guy and let the influence the design of the lore and stuff like that through him, and they let the other designer basically manage over the broad picture of the rest of the game. And since then, I think that he has just gotten better and better at, and more experienced at taking the lore that Tolkien crafts and transposing it into the game, and especially the fact that we're not directly following Frodo and Sam and all them. We have our own completely separate story, and yet it all feels like it belongs. And that's part of the way that they write the actual quests and things like that. They actually try to make it sound like it's, like Tolkien, not that he would have wrote it, but, make it sound similar to that. And so I think that they take a ton more time than I think most any other company would take in their devotion into trying to make sure that the lore is handled appropriately. Now that being said, sometimes they do have their creative moments where where they go outside of the box a bit. But I think just to remain interested in the IP, some of their team needs to take those steps. Whether or not they should actually make it into the game or not, I don't know. But I think even most of the places where they step outside of Tolkien's lore, they still try very hard to make it fit into the world and look at different influences and things like that, different European influences to try to make it fit into the world. And, for example, like the way that they did Dunland, I feel like was a fantastic job. And in Tolkien's, lore, there really isn't that much about Dunland. And so aside from the fact that they're just like these wild tribes that Rohan betrayed essentially, and they'd been warring and all sorts of stuff. But I think in general, Turbine does a better job than possibly any other company could. From what I've seen, if you look at any other adaptation of Tolkien, I can't think of one that has done a better job than Turbine. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I still think that there's
It's a lot
plenty of
more than
room.
2 cents.
Well, true. I think that
I'd
there's.
say that's like $1.
Well, thank you for monetizing my words, but I think
was that a New
that
Zealand dollar or a U.S. dollar?
I think that there's room. I think that there's room for improvement, but I think that that'd be the case with anybody involved with it. So yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts on how Turbine's done.
Right.
So when you say improvement, Andy, do you mean more adherence to the lore?
Um, yes, and maybe less side adventures like Wildermore, for example. I think they did a fantastic job creating a great story in Wildermore, but they took from like Norse mythology and some other things like that. And Tolkien was very interested in that, and there's he wrote several poems and things about ice giants and different things like that. Um, but I don't think that it fits into the Lord of the Rings so much as some of the other jobs that they've done, especially. Um, so yeah, I think that that's definitely what I meant. That the closer they get to the lore, is probably an improvement. But they still need to be telling their own story within that, because I don't think that it'd be very interesting, just following Frodo and Sam around.
So, does anyone else have anything else to add except for saying what Andang said?
It's kind of related. I mean, I agree basically with what everything he said. It's a hard line to walk. But recently, actually on Polygon, there was a really interesting article outlining the entire history of Lord of the Rings in video games, and it's a very thorough article. Although I think like the first, like when it was first published, they miswrote lore master or rune keeper as lore or as ring keepers. So, but they changed that pretty quickly because everybody was like, "Lol, no." But it's really thorough. I'll link it in chat, and I think it covers a lot of the problems that not just Turbine but other game studios have had with you know dealing with this IP and pressures from different developers dealing with it.
Anyone else? Okay. Going to a more specific question next. I'd like to ask, where do you think Turbine may have maybe gone a bit too far, or maybe there's certain characters or events or locations you think they just didn't present very well, or they simply weren't how you thought they were going to look? Because, like, for me, example, it would be Helm's Deep when they first announced it and they first showed those first screenshots. It was nothing like how I thought it was going to be. Obviously, I think me, like a lot of people, were influenced by the Jackson version of it, which are very much not alike. But
let
yeah.
me ask you this though: once you actually got into the game, do you think that's better than the Jackson version, or just different? Or
Yes, I would say it is for a game. I think for a film, the Turbine one would probably not work as well because it's kind of not as visually distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
But it is definitely good. I don't dislike it or anything. I just wasn't how I imagined it. So yeah, Pine Leaf.
For me, the thing that really got me as jarring is one that I know a lot of people really like. But I know that you're not supposed to have horses in Moria. But the whole thing with goats, uh, that's just I just can't think of.
So Pine
It
Leaf, you
just
don't
sounds
think that there were
completely.
millions of goats in Moria during this time frame?
I do not think that the dwarves go around, and certainly not anyone else going through Moria is going around riding goats. It just
Well, according to
sounds.
Peter Jackson now, dwarves ride goats into battle. So
Well,
Are
yes, and
we
done. There
Peter
you go.
are
Peter
we really
Jackson
basing
is
our
not
lore
exactly someone I'm going to.
exactly? Are we really basing our lore argument on what Peter Jackson does in the Hobbit films? I mean,
Well, here's a
really?
question, Pine Leaf. Would it have been less jarring for them to have just gone ahead and put in horses in Moria?
No, that would have been just as bad.
Just as
So
Possibly
there's
bad.
not
worse.
really much of an option
So
besides
it's kind
not
of you have
having
to
any
choose
mounts whatsoever, and that would have been
lesser
horrible.
of two evils.
Well, maybe they could have found a way to take advantage of the mining car system or something like that.
Here's a thought.
That would be a program.
Yeah, I know. But let's face it, half the time, at least in the early days of the Moria stuff, did you use your mounts all that often? Because it sounds like you go 3 feet and you run to another mob. I know that's not quite the same today, but originally.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why I'm actually more okay with the fact that there were goats allowed in Moria, because really there's not that many places you could actually use it in the old version.
But I don't know, because if I think of something that someone may take into some place like Moria, okay, you're not going to have mount horses, maybe something like mules or something like that. At least there's a history of using them in weird, awkward places. They're not very fast, probably, but people.
Right.
That's where you incorporate your mining carts there, probably. That should be your swift travel.
Right.
There you go.
Drac. You have anything?
I can only think of 2 instances, one that's in the game now and one that is coming. Of course, the one that's in the game now is, I think, the Runekeeper. They kind of bend the lore a little bit, because let's face it, a Runekeeper is nothing but like a wizard. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
You're like shooting lightning out of your fingers and your rock. I mean, come on.
The runes and
you're a
word thing
wizard,
is a very thinly veiled attempt to make it not
It's
magic.
like
but
it's a wizard,
100%.
but it's from a source that's sort of in the lore-ish.
Right. They did. I think they did a good job of like skirting around it and kind of weaving it back into the lore. Kind of.
I mean, they
Thematically,
connected it to
kind
the
of
lore,
works,
but like the way they connected it to the lore, people were not supposed to be like we're not supposed to be Galadriel or Gandalf, but that's basically what it is.
Right.
So it's lore appropriate, sort of.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other one, of course, we haven't actually seen yet, so we don't know how it's going to be, but I'm going to say it again, is the Beorning. It is not a class, they are a race. But yet, they turn them into a class. And then again, who knows how they're going to do it? They're probably going to do like what they did with the Runekeeper. They're going to weave it. There's one little, quote in the appendices somewhere that they can take and build off of, and so they can get away with it. But it's like, if you want to be the lore purist, your Beorning was a race of people, not a class. But
It'll be. I mean, I'm glad that they decided to do its own little introduction thing, because it'll be really interesting how they use that to justify the Beorning being anywhere.
yeah, and I know I'm getting all like picky about it, but it's like, I mean, show me in the books where it says they were a class.
I don't think it says that any of the classes were in the books,
Well,
to be fair, but
Yeah, but I mean, everything
You're
else
so
in the
brilliant.
game
There will be
makes-
9 classes.
Yeah, I mean, everything else in the game makes sense, lore-wise. But the Beorning, I don't see how they're gonna do it. But I
Nine-
guess we'll see. Only time will tell.
9 classes were
Edwin
given
brings
to
up a
the
good
men of the
point.
future.
Harry Edwin brings up a good point in chat. If you really want to be a lore purist, you shouldn't have all the hobbits and elves and dwarves and men running around all over the place to begin with.
Indeed. But I feel like that the desire for someone to be playing a hobbit and not wanting to spend the time to go through all the different races warrants it. But I definitely see the argument, and as someone who just plays a man, I don't want to be playing a hobbit in Rohan or other places, but I don't mind seeing other players there
It's just kind of
that
a
are,
quite
of that race.
subjective thing. I think for a lot of these, you can kind of say that they're down to gameplay necessity. The hobbits and elves
Mhm.
wandering around everywhere is an example of those. It depends on whether you personally find it acceptable based on that, or whether it just bugs you that much. It's
And
kind of subjective.
to
on that.
be fair, like the elf models in LOTRO, they can most of the time get away with looking like men unless you get up real close and pay attention. Um,
The player elves, they don't.
I mean, they stand differently, but if they're like riding past them
They're
on a
better
mount,
now, though.
you don't really notice if they're actually an elf or a man or whoever.
Back when, like, before they updated the avatars, like when the male elves had that, like,
Oh,
standing
God.
with their back broken in half thing, that was very easy to tell. But now,
Yeah,
that's
they've been doing some sort of weird accident thing, and it's just horrible.
One of the things that was kind of a big deal when it came out, but it's really died down, was the Dragok raid, because Smaug was supposed to be one of the last of the major dragons, I think, and I seem to remember that was kind of a point of contention when it came out.
From what I remember, I think their explanation was that Dragok is just simply a lesser dragon, just sort of a little one that's
Yeah,
Baby
he's
dragon.
and it's
Comparative.
crazy how big he is, and
Yeah.
yet he's still just like a lesser dragon.
One of the
It just
things
shows like
yeah.
Tolkien's lore just how massive some of the events are.
Yeah, with dragons, one of the main things that they had is that they were seeing if they could find a dragon that was powerful enough to destroy the one ring.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good.
so therefore anything that may have existed that was too weak to do that, they were just not talking about that because it wouldn't have done for their purpose.
Yep.
Any other examples people like?
I think that, while in between different parts they did a good job of telling a story in Helm's Deep, I feel like that they really missed a chance to tell a good player story during the battle. We don't need to be involved with like Aragorn and all of them, but like have us somehow involved in some type of a story that's going on, as opposed to just like being there in the battle and being numbers. And I think that that's probably more a systems limitation than anything else. But I would have liked to see more story going on there.
See, I also think that, like, because I play a captain as my main character, and that's the only class I've done that epic line with, I actually was really pleased with how the epic story was, because as a captain, you do get, like, your own little story for Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the Lawmaster's got one for when you are taken prisoner in Isengard and you go to visit Saruman. The Lawmasters, and I think burglars too, get one then, and it
Yeah.
did
Yep.
help the immersion and stuff quite a bit there.
Mhm.
So the next question is kind of opposite on that in a sense. It's asking, where do you think they've actually done really well in taking things that are either not covered very well or not written about very much, or just kind of lacking in detail in Tolkien's works, or where they've sort of taken that and expanded upon it, maybe even changed it a little bit, but it works, or maybe even works better in this than they do in Tolkien's work. Brax.
I would say pretty much the entirety of the epic story, in my mind. They do a really good job of weaving you in and out of the actual text story. So, I mean, I've been really impressed by the way they've done that. Even when you go off kind of on your own, it always eventually brings you back to something you're familiar with from the texts. And so you go and do a little side thing, you come back, and now we're with the Fellowship again. You go and do a little side thing, and yet everything kind of intertwines, and you have outside effects of the actual main story. So, you feel like you're affecting what's going on without, the Fellowship, for example, even knowing that you had something to do with it. So I think they've done a fantastic job. They've continued that throughout the entirety of the 7 years, and that would probably be my the main thing that pops out in my mind.
Sithris.
I'm pretty pleased with how they fleshed out Rohan. I mean, you get some idea because they do, travel through Rohan in the book. We don't get like a really detailed look at what daily life is like in Rohan and all the various towns and settlements. And being someone who's like really into Rohan, I was really pleased with the way they fleshed out Rohan, both the east and western Rohan.
And then.
I don't like the story in Dunland, but I feel like the way that they fleshed out all the tribes and things like that there really went and felt like that it was part of Middle-earth, and I love how they had like each of these tribes doing something different, and they had like a different quirk about them. Um, Also, I feel like that Angmar is one of their, while level design, it's very confusing and tough. I feel like from a lore point of view, and obviously the whole like Witch King being the enemy is not in there. Um, but I feel like that give them that one. They did a great job going from that point once they made that decision and fleshing out that early enemy that they needed for the game, if they were going to start, on this side of the Misty Mountains. And I feel like they really handled that very well. And it also follows like, some of the lore in Tolkien, where once like a big baddie falls, there's always a few others that come up in their place, and become just as powerful. That's how Sauron came to power because Morgoth fell. And so I think that they did a really good job fleshing out kind of the lore behind Angmar. Also, I feel like that Evendim is pretty cool, just from like being able to see the City of the Kings and stuff like that. I think that they did a great job fleshing out. So I think that those three zones for me really stand out as places that were not talked about that much in the books, at least during this time period, that they really took to a really nice polished level.
Probably the other really major example, someone else is probably going to bring it up, is Forakel with the Lost Health. They had, I think, like 1 or 2 lines in the books, and they managed to take that and create a whole zone out of it. Which they have done in other places too, but that is quite a feat.
Yeah, and I think that especially since they made them be so secluded, whereas like now if you look at like Eastern Rohan, that it's like really fleshed out and there's like all these cities everywhere. But Florikel, there's like that one main city and a couple like settlements, and the rest of it feels like it should. It's like out in the middle of nowhere, and there's just not much going on there, and yet they were able to craft this great story, and especially in the epic story, there's a fantastic plot that goes through there. So yeah, I definitely agree. They did a great job with that.
Any other comments people would like to make?
All right. I just have one thing to elaborate on concerning Dunland, is that I think Turbine did a very good job in making the Dunlandings very distinct from the orcs, because the orcs, of course, are ultimately completely evil and all that stuff. They're making it very clear here that the Dunlandings are not inherently evil. Yes, they have this politics, and these political problems with Rohan and all that stuff. They have this strong enmity with them, and they have this politics war all with each other.
Not to
which
mention
is, of course,
Saruman butting his nose in.
And then Saruman Kozan uses this politics in order to get them to actually launch an invasion against Rohan. So therefore, it's not that they're evil or anything like this is, but let's face it, there are plenty of people in the real world who've gone around starting wars in order to get revenge from earlier hurts.
I think not just Dunland either, but Enedwaith as well, which is kind of a prelude to that, where it's
that's the prelude.
Is kind of more has some of those plot.
Yeah, I consider that part of Dunland from the point of view of story.
Yeah, and I think they really benefited because it was right about that time, and I don't remember if they said that they built the system just for Dunland, or if it they'd just been working on it a while and it just happened to be available at this time. But that's the first time where they were able to create all those different type of looking NPCs within like one single race, and so they have like all these different like body features and tattoos and clothing and all that sort of stuff that really makes it feel fleshed out, and like the people are just very set apart and very diverse.
Yeah, I think the thing I really liked about Enedwaith is that over Dunland, at least, is it kind of gave you a really good look at the culture and the sort of like histories and the things they believed in with the huntsmen and everything.
Yeah.
And then when you go into Dunland, you can see they're sort of almost tearing themselves apart with Saruman's influence and then the feud with Rohan.
Yeah.
And it kind of adds the extra impact, especially with that first town and the things that happen there. Well, especially when that's the first time they use that tech. it kind of adds impact to it, I think.
Yeah, and Indoith was kind of like them teaching you like all the mythology and the lore behind the area, and then Dunland was like, all right, let's watch these people like slug it out because of what Saruman's doing and trying to influence them. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. If there's no other examples, we'll move on to the last question. All right. Simple final question here is in the future we're kind of coming up to some very big events now in the lore, obviously Battle of Minas Tirith, Pelennor Fields, and Blackgate, and so on. Are there any other ways you think Turbine could portray or cover these events and people? Maybe something different from what they're doing now, or maybe they could improve the way they're doing it. Any other suggestions you might have?
On how they could improve what they're...
I think that with us moving into this area, and we've already kind of seen this a little bit, it's just making us be a hero finally. We're in a very heroic land of Gondor, going into there. And we're finally being treated like a hero, and I feel like that did wonders for the Western Gondor storyline. And I think if they keep building that up, and still giving us like our own story for us to be heroic in, that's unrelated to what the Fellowship's doing and all that stuff, I think that they'll be successful in what they continue to go and create.
Brax.
That's pretty tough when you like what they're doing currently. I would say, I guess I would prefer not to see something like Wildermoor again, where it's totally, completely made up. I like having at least a little bit of a tie back to the original texts. So
Yeah.
I say if there's a way not to do something, let's not just make stuff up.
And I mean,
I think with how well laid out the geography is now around Gondor and Mordor, they don't really have much options for that.
exactly, that was kind of the same point that I was going to make. But at the same time, you'd think that Rohan would be laid out enough too. So
Yeah, that's a
I
pretty well documented area.
yeah, so I
If I
don't
remember right,
know.
the bit they put there is kind of just blank, or at least there isn't much around there.
That's true, and in the area near Gondor, it's much more diverse, and there's all these different kinds of places, whereas Rohan is pretty much the same. And so that's why I actually like Wildermoor, is because I feel like it was a chance for them to like cleanse their palette of Rohan, the main Rohan, and let them be creative for a little bit, and then get back into the well-defined areas of Western Rohan.
Sithith.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add.
Okay then. Any other thoughts anyone else might have?
Well, I think that one thing that could improve what they're planning to do for Central Gondor is to, instead of having an epic battle, have a skirmish there.
Oh,
Ever so slightly biased, Pineleaf.
I really do think that they need to include more story into the epic battles. If this next epic battle doesn't have more going on than just a battle that really doesn't have a starter and end, and it's just like, there's people calling out orders, but other than that, there's no real difference in what's going on aside from the waves of the enemies. I think if they find a way to be able to tell a story, kind of like what they did in Mirkwood, but not that far where there's like that very long cinematic at the end of one of them, but be able to tell the story through there without going too far, I think would be a huge advantage. If they can do that in epic battles, great. If not, I agree with Pineleaf. Get rid of epic battles and find a way to tell the story in a different way.
Yeah. Some people in the chat talking about Jarjax, how they'd want to see more of him. Yeah, he's definitely coming back. There's no way
Someone
they
says
He's
Jajax.
gotta come back.
they put too much into that character to just leave him here.
Barnabas says Jajax is Sarah Oakhart.
What?
That's insulting.
What?
Jarjax.
He moves too fast.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
He might have like a staff behind his back so he's able to move quickly. We don't know.
Have more sympathy for the Corsair than I do the old woman.
Well,
That says a
he's not.
lot, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah. If there's nothing else to add, we'll go back to Pineleaf.
All right, thank you very much for your interesting questions for this week. So we'll head off into donations. And a big thanks to Golden Star and Merrick for their $10 or more donation to LOTRO players. They were our guests last week and they paid their little visit kindly with giving us a donation. And if you would like to be like Golden Star and Merrick, you could go to Lotro Players to the donations page and help support the podcast of Lotro Players and also help support the site. We have $5 and $10 mentions where you could donate and get a mention on one or all of our active podcasts for an episode depending on the amount. For $5, you get a mention on the podcast of your choice. For $10 or more, you get a mention on all of our active podcasts. As for feedback, we did not receive any reviews and no featured comments. So we'll head on to emails. All right, Andy, could you please read Immortan's email?
I'm going to take a pass because I'm getting the stream set back up since we're almost at an hour now.
All right, very well. How about Sithrit?
Okay. And Morton wrote, I really enjoy your podcast and appreciate all the work Lotro players put into it. Keep up the good work. Since I work nights, I download every episode and listen to it while working. It really helps the time go by. I also have an issue to address as well. When Turbine removed the first age drop in OD, I've noticed that on my server, Evernight, that it has affected the community socially. Players that I used to run those raids with don't play as much if at all since the update. Players just aren't as social as before and are really just running TC and HD every so often. I have all my first age symbols in my vault, but I still ran them simply because they were fun and I enjoyed meeting new people. Any thoughts on this topic would be appreciated. Take care and once again keep up the good work. Immortan, level 100 tank on Evernight. I don't know what those acronyms mean.
Yes,
So-
I'm trying to remember them myself. I said, okay, OD.
OD is Ostunhost. It's the
Mhm.
raid in
Yeah, okay.
Enedwaith Hall.
That's, I think, the only one I know.
Right.
I don't know what TC or HD is.
Tarning's Crown and Helm's Deep, I believe.
Okay.
So he's
Obviously,
talking about the-
I don't know what
Is
this is about.
He's talking about
so-
the first age symbol drop.
The most
in
recent
Ulster.
update that lowered the drop rate on those?
Yeah,
They
Yep.
removed it from tier 1. I believe it's
Yeah.
still in tier 2 challenge.
Yeah.
it's in tier
Yeah.
2 and tier 3, but the drop rate is significantly lower on them, and people are complaining because I mean it used to be you could go in and run it even on tier 1 and you'd be guaranteed to get at least one symbol drop. Somebody in the party would get one.
So he brings up a really good point, though, he or she, because, Turbine continues to say, well, we're creating this game for the casual player. We're creating this game for the casual player. But when you lower drop rates like that, that's obviously not within reach of your majority of your target audience.
Well, I don't consider first agers to be something that should be in the range of the majority of the people.
Yeah.
I think it's a fine line you walk, though, because he's right. If it's too easy, then people get them really quick and they quit playing. But if it's too hard, people get frustrated that they're not getting them and they quit. There's got to be a sweet spot in there somewhere.
Exactly, and
Perhaps lowering the drop rate for tier 1 and then increasing it for tier 2, tier 3 challenge, etc. might have been a better move, because that would encourage people to try the higher difficulty instead of completely blocking them out from tier 1 because you don't get them at all there now.
either that or just don't put the drop rate so high in the beginning. I mean, set it to where you want it and have it be like that all the
We've
time.
had this problem multiple times now. I
Exactly.
believe it was also in the one of the Dol Guldur. I think it was the raid there.
Hmm.
They had it up for like a few weeks or so. It was very high drop rate for the first
And
stages or
Everybody,
some sort of reward there.
everybody farms it, and then
Yep.
Turbine
They
takes
nerf
it
it,
away,
and then people complain
people
that they
complain.
nerf it.
Yep.
Yeah, if they don't make the mistake of leaving it so high to begin with, they wouldn't have this issue.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying too. Just set it to where you have whatever hidden drop rate you have that players don't see. It's all in the back end numbers. Just set it when your update comes out. It's always that way, and then you might get people complaining, well, the drop rate is too low, but at least it was too low to begin with. Don't, throw a bone to people and say, go get this in this raid, and your drop rate is high, and then in a month or two say, oh well, we were just kidding, it's low now. I mean, you're just asking for your player population just to go like mental on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing is they just need to stick with one thing and go from there with whatever that is. For the first stages, they can't keep switching back and forth between easy and hard, even if it's an accident. They need to.
You're just
they need to
ticking
pay
off
attention.
both sides of anything really at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Changing stuff around too much.
All right, very well. Now we'll go into Ali's, and Ali sent us an origin story. Hail, friends. Hope you're all doing great. Each week it's awesome to listen to you guys on the podcast. I know I haven't written an email to you in a while, but LOTRO poems and my kinship casual raiders keep me so busy. I'd like to submit my origin story for Braxwolf. And if he is the one on the podcast, please have him read it. So, Brax, you wish to read this?
I'm not here.
You're not here? All right. Brax is not here, apparently.
No. That does not work unless you're a Thalros.
Yeah, I can read it. Kind of flattered that somebody sent one in. So I read through this once. This is a very, as you would expect, epic type story from Ali, being that he writes a lot of epic poetry for us. And I guess here we go. In the middle of the night, the city bells tolled as the gate was blown to pieces with a boom. A darkness, deeper than the dark of night, started spreading and veiled the stars of Varda, as men gathered in front of the broken gate, ready to meet the invaders. Men and women stood to defend their city, but no one came through the gate. A silence, like all sound had been sucked into a void vacuum. Then the footsteps were heard, like boots of metal against the stony ground. A dread fell on the defenders. Their hearts gave away. They started running away, screaming soundlessly as he came. He didn't need an army. His magic was powerful. Amongst the chaos, one man rose and stepped forward to meet this evil foe. One man who mustered the courage to face this sorcerer. One man who overcame his fear. The lone wolf, Braxwolf, and in his hand the staff of blue light. The Witch King unsheathed his sword and held it up, pointing towards the dark sky as it lit with a flame of magic, as he peered into the soul of this brave warrior and focused all his will on one being. The dread lifted from the hearts of the defenders, and they stood in silence to watch this duel, still in fear. "You're not welcome in this town, sorcerer," said Braxwolf. "Go back and leave this town." "Who dares stand against the Witch King of Angmar?" asked the Witch King. His voice echoed from all directions, but Brax stood his ground and kept walking towards the dreadful foe. "For long have we lived in your fear, but no more. Tonight we fight. Tonight we conquer our fear. Tonight we rise up. Tonight we push back." As he said that, he held up his staff towards the sky as the veil lifted and the light of Valar shined on him, and the night was as bright as the middle of the day. The Witch King let out a scream and ran towards his steed, releasing the city from his fear, and everyone cheered, "Yay!" and lifted Braxwolf on their shoulders. Freebird. Good had won and evil was defeated, for evil, by its nature, is bound to be defeated.
You shall not pass.
So Brax is Gandalf?
Yeah, I think maybe we both are.
Do you guys take turns?
Well, let's face
They
it.
have a
One of them
road.
is
Gandalf
gray
is
and
such
one
a
is
great
Gandalf the White.
figure. No one person could be Gandalf.
That's true.
Except for
So it's
Gandalf.
like everybody starts.
Well,
everybody
yeah.
starts picking up like Spartacus, like I am Gandalf. No, I am Gandalf. No, I am Gandalf.
Wait, wasn't Sis with Gandalf at one point?
She was.
Yeah, I was
That was her
Gandalf.
thing. And then this episode we stole it from her.
Mm.
So who
It's
is
okay. I'm a cat
Gandalf?
now. So.
I don't know, but he's stolen.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. You can contact us by emailing us at podcast@lotroplayers.com. Remember, that is a new email address, podcast@lotroplayers.com. You can also follow us at Twitter at the Players Alliance, at Players Ally, Lotro Players at Lotro Players, Andang at PVMP_Andang, Braxwolf at Braxwolf, Sithrith at Sithrith, Draculetta at Draculetta_72, Etheros at Etheros, Lily Kate at Lily Kate Buggins, Mystery at Mystery XOX, and Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles. And the Lotro Players goes live on Lotro Players News goes live every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and
You've
DDO
messed up
Players goes
finally.
live every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. He changed the layout of this thing and really confused
Yeah, I
me.
really should have talked to you before. Basically, I was wanting you to go this way, whereas like the Players Alliance live shows include Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, DDO Players
Yeah,
News,
you don't need to
and
repeat it.
Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, Lotro Players News.
You broke
Yes.
Pineleaf, Andang.
You do.
broke him.
Yeah,
Till the end of the
you
episode.
should know how to use page break sanding properly. Yes.
Wow.
If you go into journalism, you need to use those things right. You can join us on our
Pineleaf
live
is
shows
snarky
at
today.
LotroPlayers.com/live. And you can also join us on Langeville for Lotro Players Adventures every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for listening, and that is it for tonight. This is Pineleaf Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.